As a mage of the School of Destruction, I'm not gonna lie. Doing paperwork was not my favorite thing to do. I guess it's not very many people's favorite, but I could alter the fabric of reality to blow stuff up so it's extra boring. What's worse was that my desk was full of it. Mission reports I hadn't filled out, artifact descriptions that needed to be filed. All of it was a testament to my procrastination. I turned to my monitor and logged in to find an alert pop up on my feed. It was from Dr. Isabela Silva. Most guys would have loved to receive a message from the gorgeous Sansarian woman, but I was not one of those guys. Whenever she sent me a message, it was always about to be a task and a half, but I'd become one of her most reliable friends, much to my misfortune. I pressed the pop-up on my screen to reveal a message saying that she'd be at my office 9 a.m. After taking a look at the chrono, it was about 9 a.m. in about 3 minutes. Well, so much for organizing my office before she arrived. Almost as if my thoughts summoned her, I heard a ping from the set of double doors as the AI announced,
Dr. Silva is here to see you, sir.
Yeah, let her in, I answered, and she came strolling through the open doors. She was a light blue-skinned woman with dark blue tentacles that fell around her shoulders. Each one had a gold ring at the end of it. She was shapely, with fins that protruded from her forearms and calves. She had finned ears and a set of sapphire eyes that pierced the soul. All of this was complemented by her lab coat and an insulated cybernetic mesh that left little to the imagination. She walked into my office, observing the scattered books on the floors and some on the little tables I'd left open, then smiled at me.
Your office is in impeccable shape as always.
We aim to please. She chuckled, but my demeanor grew serious. So what you need?
I need a favor, but I'm guessing this time it might be a welcome change of pace.
She gestured at my paperwork. I sighed. This woman knew me too well. She came walking towards my desk, then sat atop, and gave me one of her famous smiles, the same one that turned so many men into mush.
But I can tell you while we take a little walk around the academy, it's been forever since we spent time together.
That's because every time we spend time together, you inevitably ask for something nonsensical. She laughed.
And whose fault is that?
I huffed as she continued.
Look, I can only rely on you, considering that most only have naughty intentions when they do me a favor. Besides, taking a walk with me isn't the worst thing you could be doing, and it'll get you back in the action instead of filing documents.
She turned to look at the snow coming down over the mountaintops through my viewport, since I had a nice view of the peaceful, snowy landscape. Fine. Lead the way. She began to walk back toward the elevator across the well-polished polymer floors. I followed a moment afterwards, but not before I grabbed my revolver, whom I affectionately named Hunter, and put it in the holster on the back of my robes. We walked past the furnished waiting room to the elevator on the other side. We got into the elevator and she leaned against the back wall as we came down towards the training halls. The elevator had a glass lookout and we could see a few mages in the arena. I looked out to see a young boy and girl facing off against a few training robots while their master watched over them. It was a plain-looking arena, and the master was an old coot who went by the name Ebenezer Clyde. He looked like the stereotypical wizard, you know the type, brown robes, pointy hat, but he was a good mentor and teacher for young mages.
Did you ever think about taking on a student?
Izzy asked. No, why?
Because you'd make a great teacher and because there are a lot of students that look up to you.
I stayed silent after all. Part of why I was around was to hunt rogue mages. A life of violence was not one to teach the young to adore. I turned back to face her as she came to watch alongside me. We came to the second floor of the training arena where we came to the railing to spectate the rest of the match. On the bottom floor were the two students. One was a Nemean girl with 4 arms and black skin with gold runes running through her skin. The other was a lizard-like boy who had red scales and a cobra-like head, a Tarek. The training bots had the two surrounded, but at least the girl looked confident. The young Tarek seemed a bit nervous, beginning to form haphazard hand signs, but before he could perform his spell, the bots shot him with a stun round that knocked him out cold. The girl cursed at his failing but remained calm, placing 2 of her hands together and letting the 2 orbs from her other hands float. Her eyes lit ablaze with purple fire, which caused the orbs to fire bolts to destroy 3 of the bots. The other students began to cheer, next to Master Clyda, but unfortunately the girl lost focus, which allowed the remaining bots to shoot her in the back, knocking her down to the ground. I could hear the old man begin to lecture them while Isabela continued,
I suppose I had an idea that might put you in charge of a very interesting apprentice.
And you mention this to me now. Why do I have a distinct feeling that you already suggested this to the headmaster?
I did. We're just waiting on you to agree.
What makes you think I would?
Arxur Academy is the home of mages, wizards, sorcerers, and witches. Not every country understands that. Besides, the mage in question is a boy I tried to mentor back when I was still in Bastion's army. He's a kid on the wrong side of the tracks, but he's trying to use his power for good. You've got a rare compassion for people that have it rough. And you're not like the others, so stuck in the rules that you can't adapt to an unconventional student.
So she wanted me to take on a student who, more than likely, was an outlaw at this point, has issues with authority, and he would hate someone like me. While I didn't have the most troubled childhood, my experiences as a rogue mage hunter would have driven most people insane. I suppose she thought a student wouldn't be worse than surviving the obnoxious situations I'd been in. That said, I wasn't about to take on a student when there were far better teachers here. I'll look for the kid, but I can't guarantee that I'll be his teacher. My hands are far too dirty to teach him in the right way. He needs someone who isn't steeped in the violence mage hunters are accustomed to. People like Master Clyde down there would give him a far better education. That excuse should work.
Whatever you say.
She said. Then we began to walk to the other side of the arena. We walked down a set of stairs that led to a massive door that opened automatically when we came close. The hall was massive, allowing for the passage of many students, while large statues of legendary mages stood sentinel. For a moment we passed several hurrying students in a rush to their next classes, before I finally asked, "Tell me a bit more about this kid."
Well, he specializes in magic that's consistent with the School of the Unseen. When last I saw him, he used 3 catalysts, each a silver ball that can't be separated from him. Each one can turn into an eye with varying effects. His name is Zarek Shin.
So, where's he at?
Bastion, Slade City.
I thought about that for a minute. Bastion was not a very friendly nation when it came to mages. The Western continent as a whole went through a phase of religious nutjobs versus mages, and it tore nations like Bastion apart. Now they're about as atheist and anti-magic as it gets. On top of all that, Slade City was literally one of the most run-down cities on the planet. Plagued with crime and society's unwanted, it was a cesspit for the most dangerous criminals known to man. That's a hard sell, Izzy, even if he's a prodigy, I said. But she turned back and smiled as we passed a small door on the left side, where the infirmary and her office were.
I know, but you can handle it. I owe you one, Jaden.
Wait, I haven't. She disappeared into the infirmary, leaving me in the halls, surrounded by the incoming students. I sighed. There was so little information. How was I supposed to find this kid? I looked up at the ceiling and stared at the fluorescent lights, then began to proceed towards the end of the hall. I walked past a few doors, then came to a decorated door on the left that led to one of Arxur Academy's libraries. The enormous room had shelves stacked high with data slates and books from bygone eras. Magic theory piled on high, at least 4 floors worth of knowledge in this library alone. Mankind had figured out so much about the word and how it bestowed magic to each of us in such unique ways. But there was always more to know, more to see. I walked through the black carpeted library to one of the tables and sat, pulling up a menu from the hollow table. I selected a book on the School of the Unseen Magic to try and understand the way a mage with this kind of magic thought and acted. This was generally the process when I started hunting, finding out how their magic worked and adapting my own in a way that was an effective counter. Aside from just finding a needle in a haystack, there was the fact that this kid specialized in the School of the Unseen, which meant his magic would make him difficult to detect through magic sense alone. I sighed as a hoverbot brought me the requested book. It was from a scholar on the School of the Unseen, a tome from the Isra Hyzen, an infamous assassin known for killing one of the last emperors of the East.
About to head off on another of Isabela's little requests?
A voice behind me said, only for me to find that it was a human the rest of the academy called Lancelot. He was known as the Blade Mage, using melee weapons as his catalyst. He was tremendously powerful, and frustratingly enough, he considered me his rival. I hadn't wanted that, but whenever we sparred, the matches were close, with the winner only narrowly eking out victory. He wore a set of armor that looked like a knight's armor, but fashioned after our modern power armor that was silver with red secondary colors. A cloak of scarlet was draped around his shoulders, pressed down by a vibrant white, gold, and blue sword he named Excalibur. He had a rugged face with pale skin, and he wore his hair short. He was what most women found attractive, and he drew stares wherever he went. Behind him were a few mages he called his disciples, all of which had an arrogant look about them. Amongst them were a few ladies that most jokingly referred to as his fangirls. Oddly enough, the one woman he wanted attention from was Dr. Silva, so it's no wonder he was here. Everyone stopped what they were doing to watch our exchange. How rude could they be? I wanted to scream, "Mind your own business," but that would just play into his hands. I gave him my usual unimpressed look, fighting desperately to suppress the urge to slap the taste out of his mouth. I haven't quite accepted the request yet.
Well then, perhaps I can help? After all, I have a few friends that could help me find, well, whatever it is that she's looking for a bit faster.
Nah, I think I'll be fine. I was lying, of course, but I felt like being contrary. I looked at the man and at his little flunkies who gave me hard looks. Besides, I figure a guy like you would have far too much to do to help out with such a small request. I gave him an infuriating smile, both of us staring daggers into the other.
All right, my friend. Well, I'd better get to that important task. I envy you, you know, but one day I'll show you that I'm the greatest mage alive.
He finished, then walked back out of the library. I leaned back and looked up at the ceiling while others returned their attention back to what they were doing. I smiled ruefully, wondering whether Izzy told that bastard I'd agreed just so that he'd come see me and ensure I took her little request. I took a few more moments in the library before I left to begin making preparations for the long trip south.